Hello, and welcome to Social Work Speaks, a podcast dedicated to helping future social workers explore behavioral health careers through interviews with Dayton area professionals. This podcast is made possible by a generous grant provided to Sinclair Community College's Social Work Department by Behavioral Health Career Exploration. I'm your host, Caleb Cromer, and today I'm talking to Rhea Megnin. So stay tuned for our interview with them in just a moment. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. We are here with Rhea, who has been in the field since 2016. Rhea, how are you doing today?
Doing very well, thanks. It's
Good.
a little cold out at this time of year,
Yep.
but glad to be inside and getting to share some stuff about social work.
Yes, we made it. So you told me that this is your first podcast that you've ever been on. What are your thoughts right now before we get deep into it? What are you thinking?
Oh, so much excitement. I had a career in journalism before going into social work, and it was so exciting to know that the things I was getting to discover every day, there was a place to share it with,
Right.
and readers that would get more knowledge and more resources, and I loved that aspect. I've always been passionate about education, so
Oh, nice.
it's good to be able to share the news
Good.
here too.
Yeah, so do you listen to podcasts on your own time?
Occasionally, yes. Most of my time is spent either working or connecting with community, and occasionally I actually listen to things audio, but most of my learning is visual. So,
Oh, okay. Do you have any specific podcasts that you find to be your favorite or anything?
oh gosh, well, there's Social Work Speaks.
Oh, yes, a wonderful one, of course. So I like to look at podcasts, especially in a sense like this, as a borderline form of social work, since you are speaking to the people about behavioral health and everything that goes with it. So I always really appreciate you guys for coming on here and doing this, just because I think a podcast is just an easy way for somebody to get information without having to do a bunch of extra research on their own. They're getting the information from somebody who's already been in the field, who's knowledgeable and experienced. So what you're doing is a great thing for everybody who watches, and I'm sure they will all appreciate you as well. So again, big thank you from me for joining me here on the podcast. It impacts more people because it lasts for so long.
It does.
Like the internet, this is going to be here for hopefully generations. And people get to watch all ages and everything. So you could be inspiring people from 10 years from now and stuff like that. So it's a wonderful thing. I'm glad that this is something that we're able to do now. And with the world moving in such an electronic way, I think this is a perfect way to continue to build the social work community, because a lot more people need to be a part of it. And that's basically what we're going to talk about today.
And neurobiologically, you're right on track. All of the research shows we evolved to listen to stories. We evolved to connect with each other, with other human beings, in order to figure out what's going to help us survive.
Yes.
So getting to hear the same information from a textbook versus actually hearing it from a human being across the table from you, yeah, that makes a big difference. Our brain encodes it very differently.
Yes, I agree. And to me personally, I think it's really motivating, and maybe people watching might feel that way as well. But hearing somebody talk about something that I'm interested in and thinking about going into, I get a lot of inspiration and motivation from that. So hopefully a lot of other people will as well. But we have a few topics lined up for today, and we're going to hit them in the time that we need to, so you can, elaborate on questions if you feel the need to and things like that. But the first topic that I wanted to hit was generally relating to your experience in the field. So let's start with what got you interested in going into the field of behavioral health.
So that one goes all the way back to the late 70s when I popped onto this planet and had the incredible support of community efforts that were rooted in social work efforts. So I had a single mom, and we didn't have family support, and we had a lot of poverty that we were facing. Mom had had tremendous challenges throughout her life, but she was determined to make a better life for both of us. And that meant that she had to stop working for a while and actually rely on welfare, and had a lot of shame about that. But this is what a community does for each other.
Right.
And the fact that it's coming from a government organization instead of from family or community, somehow that's supposed to be bad? No, we're sharing our resources to support those who need the most help.
Yes.
With that help, we had WIC, we had access to food stamps they were called at the time. It's SNAP benefits now. We had some, I don't remember if we got rental assistance. I think that was just coming out of what
Okay.
we were receiving at the time. But there was a United Way daycare that I got to attend.
Oh.
And that was subsidized daycare so that my mom, once I was old enough, she could start going and getting a college degree
Oh, nice.
at the state-funded college. And she was riding a bus, she was walking, and there was one time that we ended up on the front page of the newspaper because she was carrying me down the street, piggyback, through the driving snow in bitter chill. We were all bundled up, you can't even see our faces. And this was Massachusetts in the early 80s, and it was very cold in the winters.
Yeah.
And we ended up on the front page, just she was carrying me to daycare so she could then walk the rest of the way to the college campus
Wow.
and get her degree. She did. She finished a 5-year degree in 3 years, and she was able to get employment, and we moved on from there. And all of those resources, knowing how important that was for me to be able to have a life with opportunities, meant that was always in the back of my head.
Right.
I went into journalism first, but when I left that field, I found my way to doing social justice work and also to leading workshops that empowered people and taught them skills for communication and conflict navigation. And I found so much passion for that. Again, educating people, but in a way that really made a difference in their lives. I said, I want to know more about this. So that's how I ended up going into college. I took a couple courses here at Sinclair to see if the field would be good. I took a psychology course. I took a statistics course. Bless them for putting up with me there. And then I went on to take a couple courses at Wright State and then go get my graduate degrees in social work and public policy at The Ohio State University.
Wow. Okay. That's a wonderful life span right there. Okay. So first of all, I want to say that hearing your mother's story, I want everybody to know, living proof, really. If you work hard enough and grind hard enough, you can do whatever you need to do. I think a lot of people get caught up in thinking that things get too hard and they lose motivation. They don't think they can do it. But hearing a story like that, that's just sheer willpower, wanting to achieve the goals that she had set. And that right there is inspiring enough.
Yep. And you
So-
can't do it alone.
Yeah.
Because no matter how hard she fought, if she hadn't had the resources of food and rental assistance of whatever form it was coming, of daycare that was affordable, none of that would have been possible.
Right.
And I would not be sitting here right now.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hey, everything happens for a reason. So that's a wonderful story. And so you had your motivation and you got into it. What have been some challenges that you faced during your years of doing this?
Oh, probably the biggest challenge was getting to see that no matter what organization you're part of, and I've been in social justice circles, I've been in faith circles, I've been in nonprofit and for-profit circles whether it was a community leader or in social work practice itself. None of it is going to be perfect. We can have the best laid missions, the best structures, the best organizational plan in place, and then you introduce the humans.
Yes.
And as amazing as we are, we also have our challenges. And those things will continue to affect how effective the mission actually is in the world.
Right.
And being able to say, okay, this is not going to be perfect. How do I find that balance between getting the work done to the extent that we possibly can and holding ourselves to that vision and that mission without giving up?
Right.
Knowing that we're never going to actually achieve actual perfection, whatever that definition is, because that's always evolving as well. So that was the biggest challenge, was just going in going, I know how to save the world. We all know how to save the world. It's right there. We've done the research. We have the examples. We know what works to end homelessness. We know what works to create safety for people of all backgrounds.
Right.
Why don't we do it? Oh, because there's humans.
Yes.
Let's figure out how to be strategic about that instead of just being shocked and caught flat-footed and end up sprawled on the ground crying about it.
Yeah.
When no, we're in positions, we have that knowledge. Let's bring everybody else along with us now.
That's such a great mindset. I never heard it like that before. It's a great way to explain it. So you face those challenges, and apparently, you love this field of work so much that those challenges don't faze you. You still work through them regardless. So tell me about some things that you enjoy the most about working in this field.
So I love the flexibility of social work.
Okay.
When my advisor had suggested, my business advisor had suggested that, okay, if you're looking to get a degree, that would allow you to be doing some form of behavioral health in addition to your social justice work, you should look at social work. I was very caught off guard. I said, well, you've known me for months. We've been working together for a long time. Why do you think I want to work with foster care?
Yeah.
And that was literally my only understanding of what social workers did. And she just starts laughing. She says, oh, honey, social work is so much more than working with foster care children. There's infinite ways to work with children as a social worker. You can be working in the schools. You can be working at a children's hospital. You can be doing advocacy to help make sure they're having access to things like SNAP benefits.
Yeah.
You could be doing forensic interviews to help prepare them for court hearings on custody. There's so many different things you can do for kids. But social workers also work the entire lifespan. We're working with pregnant moms, we're working with elders, we're working with people who are unemployed, we're working with people who are going through grief and trauma, we're helping people find careers, we're in every single aspect of society.
Yes.
And you're also empowered with politics and policy making and influencing. There's folks that are doing faith-based social work from every faith tradition.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so much. You can be everywhere, kind of like being a journalist, which
Yeah.
it's like, okay, so I still get to see how the world works and be able to play in that field,
Right.
no matter what direction the career goes. Yeah, this sounds like the right fit for me.
Okay, nice. I like that. So do you have, just generally, an experience that was remarkable enough that really impacted your life in this field, like working with a client or something? Has there been a moment that's really stood out to you?
Oh gosh, so many. Oh, probably the first time that a client came back and said, I did it. I did what our goal was. I thought it was impossible. I wouldn't have been able to do this without you. Now, that's going to stroke anybody's ego.
Right.
And most of your good training in social work is going to be reminders that you're just along there as a guide. You're not there to do it for the client. You're not there to rescue anybody. You're not there to come in as a savior on a white horse, swinging your sword to make the whole world better. No, you're there to empower and engage and support people. And still to know that you were the one that helped facilitate that. It's what I loved the most about writing and journalism and hearing people's stories. It was a way to share it in order to make a difference and make sure people had access to information and support systems that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah, okay. I like that. So you said that you have a lot of different experiences like that, very powerful ones. So there's something that I'm curious about personally.
Yeah.
How many people do you see on a daily basis, monthly basis? Like, how many people are you dealing with really in this field?
Well, it depends on your position as a social worker.
Okay.
I know folks who work for large agencies, maybe something like Job and Family Services, where they have several hundred people on their caseload
Oh my
that
gosh.
they're trying to manage. And
Several hundred.
that just speaks to how neglected children and family services are in this state, how underfunded, undertrained, undersupported. It creates the kind of deluge and volume that will break a person very quickly
Okay.
unless they are able to just, treat it like numbers and
Yeah.
disconnect. I've been very fortunate in that most of the places I worked, it was a much smaller workload. When I was working full-time with Equitas Health, we worked 5 days a week. 7 client sessions were available per day.
Oh,
But some of those, so that would have been, 35 a week.
yeah.
I would say we generally ended up seeing somewhere between 25 and 30, both because you had supervision slots that were protected. You could have paperwork slots if you wanted those.
Okay.
There might be regular standing meetings and group processing that was
Yeah.
going on. And then in addition to that, you have clients that had to no-show or cancel at the last minute.
Okay. Makes
So
sense.
it was manageable. That said, now that I have a private practice, what I see in the field is most of us are aiming for about 20 client sessions per week.
Okay.
Now, that can be heartbreaking because I want to see 40,
Oh, wow.
which
All right.
would, but you learn very quickly that that's not necessarily sustainable for the long haul, for the level and depth of one-on-one individual sessions you might be doing, or partners work that you're doing, family therapy that you're doing, because it does take a lot out of you.
I bet.
When you're having 5, 6, 7 very intense conversations
Yes.
each day with all that emotional attunement.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure you're doing it in a way that won't leave you exhausted.
Right, right. So like what you're saying is 20 is kind of that sweet spot?
Seems to be for me. I have had times I've needed to drop that down to closer to 10 to 15, especially if I'm doing a lot of groups or education programs in
Okay.
addition, if there's other workload or personal load things going on.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any advice for somebody who's about to go into this behavioral health, social work career field? What advice would you give to them, beginners?
To absolute beginners who haven't gotten to do much of it yet,
Yeah.
learn, get out in the world. It's the same advice that we give to writers, to artists, to business people, to nonprofit leaders, to politicians. If we're not bringing a broad understanding of the world and how it works to our space, then we run a much higher risk of bringing our own bias into those situations.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. After we moved out of the inner city when I was about 6 years old, we moved to a wealthy suburb. And
Okay.
as we know from the history of redlining in our country, didn't matter whether you were deep south or way north,
Yeah.
the separation, the segregation is real. And I went to a school with 1,600 students from 5 towns, and you could count on one hand the number of people who weren't at least appearing to be white in
Right.
that community. That's not okay. I missed out on so much diversity, so many amazing stories, so many perspectives, and it took a lot of years to be able to unlearn that. So the more you get out there and meet the people, be in the community,
Yeah.
explore, discover, read, learn, that's my advice. And don't focus just on social work. Focus on all the things that make us rich humans, because
Okay.
we heal in relationship. And if you're not able to bring a genuine human sense of self into that space, we're going to get overwhelmed by the clients we're working in,
Yeah.
or we're going to overwhelm them with our preconceived notions and the systems that we are here to serve.
Okay, I like that. So basically, just don't get like tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Make sure that you stay focused on everything, and don't focus just on the social work aspect, because that does make sense. You do need a lot of skills to be able to prevail in a field like this, because and you asked me if I had any social work experience. Not
Yeah.
really, but I mean, I've been working in like sales. I worked at like Planet Fitness and stuff, front desk.
Yes.
But you
People.
talk to a lot of people, and they all have stories. They all have feelings and emotions. And I guess somebody like me, because I'm interested in doing like therapy and
Yes.
stuff for people, I feel like I could do something like that because I enjoy helping people. So for some reason, people felt the need that, they can talk to me, tell me things and whatnot. So professionally, no, I haven't dealt with social work, but I kind of understand it, if that makes sense.
You do.
Yeah, like I understand what you're saying, because some people need that outlet. And when they finally get that outlet, it really does change their life and everything. And you have to learn how to talk to people, because each person is unique. Each person is different. And that takes skill to be able to understand them, because a lot of people they'll listen, but they don't understand. And in a field like this, understanding is one of the most important things, because you can't help them if you don't truly understand what they're dealing with and going through.
It certainly helps.
Yes.
So I very recently had a new client come in, and they are a person who has lived experience of being a marginalized person based on their color of their skin in our society. And I'm straightforward. I'm like, hey, I'm pointing at my arm here. This says I have never had to face that kind of discrimination. I've never had to be judged based on what I look like as opposed to who I am in the ways that you have had to face. There are things I am not going to understand. I'm going to miss it. It's going to go right over my head, even though I'm 6'1". It's gonna not impact in the same way, or I won't understand the full impact on your life. So if you think that I might be missing something, please call me out. Tell me to go get my education. This is not your job to educate me about it. Simply point out, hey, you might be missing something here. And then I can go do that work. But mostly I want to be here to listen, support, validate, share, explore with you. And hopefully the things that we do have in common are going to outweigh the stuff that I am actually going to miss.
Yeah. So that's actually an interesting point that we can kind of touch on. So working with minorities, is that like more of a difficult thing when you get into areas where you don't know about certain stuff, or do you just find a way to work around it? What's your say about that?
I think it's really important to be conscious and to name it and to talk about it openly.
Okay.
If someone comes in and they're from a religious tradition that I didn't grow up with or I haven't entered into later in my life, there's stuff I'm just not going to understand. And I'll say, hey, here's where I am an expert. This is what you're coming for these goals. If you find that some of your goals are lining up more with processing this aspect,
Yeah.
then let's see if we can make sure that you have resources for that. It might just be some books or podcasts,
Oh, okay.
but maybe
Understand.
I'll be tapping into my networks and saying, hey, does anyone know someone in the field who has expertise in this area?
That's awesome.
So, because I don't have all the answers for
Yeah.
any of my clients, let
Yeah.
alone for someone who has specific needs in a particular area. So let's collaborate.
Yeah.
I myself have seen multiple therapists simultaneously if I'm working on, hey, I want to do some EMDR over here, or hey, I want to be focusing on what it was like in my childhood. I want to be focusing over here. Oh, someone over here can do neurofeedback work and they have a specialized machine for that. Okay. And you collaborate. I see a physical therapist and I see my doctor. There's no difference in the mental health field. You see
Okay,
your
nice.
specialists as well as your general practitioners.
All right. So there's much more connectivity
Yeah.
than everybody's kind of working with each other to help where help is needed.
Ideally.
Okay. Okay. I see now. So you have been working in this field for almost 10 years now, and a lot changes over 10 years. A lot
Indeed.
changes. And I assume that this field has changed over time. Could you tell us how it's changed from your perspective?
So, in my time, I was very lucky. By the time I got to Ohio State, the concept of trauma being a significant part of people's lived experience was fully accepted, and we were able to encounter that a lot in our curriculum. While that wasn't necessarily seen fully out in the field yet.
Okay.
Now I'm very hard put to find a therapist who isn't trauma informed at some level. And that lens is, to me, a fundamental shift from a perspective that used to be a very shame-based, top-down, hierarchical model of we, the professionals, know the answers, know what is the right way to be. You're coming in to fix your problems, and we're here to make sure that they get fixed. If you're not working with us toward it, there's something wrong with you. You're a failure.
Yeah.
To this shift that's much more saying, there's nothing wrong with you. There are goals that you're struggling to meet because of circumstances that you experienced, resources that were not available to you, stresses that were overwhelming at those ages.
Yeah.
And what can we do to address those trauma experiences in ways that will free you up to be able to access the full awesome glory of your strengths, of your knowledge, of your skills, of your amazing self, and bring that into action. And that understanding that not everyone is given the same easy road in life. There's no personal failure. There's simply, oh, you got overwhelmed. Let's make sure that we can support you in overcoming that.
Right.
So the trauma-based understanding has been growing in our field. And we're also seeing a vast exploration, vast expansion of our understanding of how the body's experience impacts what's going on mentally. I like to tell my clients that our mental health field right now is where the medical field was in the early 1700s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
we're still figuring out the taxonomy of how to classify what's going on when we see symptoms.
Right.
If you talk to anybody in the field who's been out there for a while, you mentioned the DSM and we just kind of cringe because the DSM is such an early way of looking at how things are aligned or misaligned.
Okay.
We have these labels, we have these divisions and structures of what we think the brain is supposed to be doing and what it's actually doing out there. And we have thousands of people from all over the world contributing and arguing and showing research and challenging and saying, oh, well, we shouldn't look at it this way, we should look at it this way. And every 10 years or so, we come out with a new version of the DSM that might look radically different from what we were saying just a few years ago.
Yeah.
This is how it is. So being able to hold it all very lightly and say, this is a conception, this is the agreement of people who've been in the field, usually for 30 or 40 years.
Oh, wow.
But by the time that they weigh in, let's hold it all lightly. And then looking at it and saying, well, is there a different way of conceiving this? If a client comes into me and they're complaining about anxiety, let's look at, are you sleeping? What's your nutrition? What's going on with your movement? Do you have regular time with another human being who can regulate you?
Yeah.
Do you have time in nature? What's happening with these fundamental things? And then we can look at what's going on with medications, what's going on with your family history, what's going on with your genetics. Then we can start looking at what were your early childhood experiences like? What were your attachment issues with your family of origin? Then we can maybe start looking at what are the actual stresses and resources you have in your life right now? How is that all balancing? And we can just come in with curiosity and compassion and say, let's consider you as a whole being, not as this problem walking in who's not following my advice.
Yeah. That's a lot of layers.
It's a lot of layers.
There,
Yeah.
that you got to peel through before you can really get to the core.
Yeah.
Wow.
And can we do that together? Can we do that with curiosity instead of coming at our bodies and our lives as issues, as problematic?
Yeah. So I want to say that I'm learning just along with everybody else. I'm learning too. So
Same here.
So you're working through these things with a person, and when they achieve the goals that they wanted to achieve, do they still come and see you, or like do they just like stop and go off on their own? What is that like when they reach the point in the life that they wanted to get to?
Well, the answer is yes.
Oh, okay.
It's all of the above. So when you're working in some social work settings, people are coming in because they're unemployed. People are coming in because they have an addiction issue. You might be in a very resource limited space where it's, okay, you have 12 sessions. What can we get done in that time?
Oh, okay.
Or you're living in a homeless shelter and I'm the first time that you've seen someone in 2 weeks since you arrived. We have 75 minutes to get your entire history and figure out the goals and get you connected with resources. And then you, with your severe mental health issues, your absolute trauma state of
Right.
not having a safe space to be, are supposed to deal with these challenges. Yeah, a lot of times you never get past that first meeting because there's too much distress. But in a private practice where someone's coming in, they're mostly stable, they're able to access things, I might see them indefinitely.
Okay.
Because the goals are less about let's do immediate survival tasks, and they're more about how do you improve the quality of your life to be able to reach healthier relationships, to be able to pursue lifetime goals.
Okay.
Most of my clients, I would say, are completing care within 2 to 3 years.
Oh.
They're enough of their needs have been met. They're ready to go off and explore and play. But I'll have people come back after a year or two away and just be like, hey, I've got this new thing coming on. Do you want to address this? So it's really specific to the person.
Yeah, for sure.
And sometimes I will refer them out because I'm going, I'm seeing these other things coming up. We've really completed a lot of these goals, and the new ones that we've been coming up with, we're not really seeing a lot of progress. I think we might need to get you to someone who can help you focus on those long term.
Okay. Some more connectivity in there.
Yeah.
So we talked about how things have changed over time. What are your thoughts about the future of the field? Do you see it in a positive light? What do you think?
I think social work is going to be necessary for every community, every family. If I ran the world, I'd be like, okay, social workers for every family, just available as a resource. Again, not coming in as tools of the state to force you to conform to a particular way of raising a family or meeting your needs, but simply a resource that can say, hey, let's find out what your needs are, what your goals are, and I can come alongside and help you meet them.
Okay.
Or I'm seeing this pattern. Are there things we can do to help interrupt or shift that track to make sure that everybody's getting their core needs met? But really centering the clients and their needs, centering the community. The future, I think, will be heavily shaped by what we are seeing politically.
Oh, okay.
Because the politics is personal, personal is politics.
Yes.
The more I learned about that, getting my policy degree, the more I learned in journalism, the more I learned in social work, the more I realized, government is not this big, bad outside organization coming in and imposing things.
Yeah.
Government is simply, we don't have the grandmas and the grandpas here. We don't have a council sitting down around the village fire and saying, we've got this entire piece of meat. Let's make sure every family gets some, including the widow, including the elder, including the shamans, including the kids, we have a government that's coming in and doing that for us on a much larger scale.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So-
if they're not valuing what social work is valuing, we're going to have a harder time doing that. And that's what I certainly see now. We have a shift under the current Republican administration that's saying we are here to benefit the folks that have power already and are scared about losing that power.
Yeah.
When we look historically, when we look at the systems, and saying that those who are actually in need on the ground, those who voted for this administration thinking that they would lower the price of groceries,
Yeah.
are unfortunately the last people who are going to benefit, if at all. So I'm not encouraged. We are already seeing threatened cuts to funding for things like Ryan White funds. Ryan White funds have been around since the 1990s to help provide AIDS prevention and HIV prevention for full communities. Anybody who's at risk can get medical care, can get resources that allow them to access mental health, access food, access housing, access transportation, things that help prevent widespread health problems,
Yeah.
physical and emotional and mental, and improve the economy for a community. Those funds are going away potentially, and there's a back and forth right now. We're uncertain about it. We've already seen massive threatened and actual cuts to things like food, things like making sure folks will be able to access their Social Security. Will folks be able to access SNAP benefits? Things that allowed me and my mom to not just thrive, but to survive
Yeah, exactly.
40 years ago are being taken away from families who deserve it just as much as we did.
Right.
So,
I didn't even think about it like that, because if all of that is happening, then that means there's going to be more people who need social workers and need to talk and everything. So that's like a direct impact.
and yet the funding that pays for, not always well, the social workers to be doing this work in the community
Yeah.
that used to be done by extensive family networks and by village community networks. Faith groups, other organizations used to step in to some extent. Unions would make sure that their families were being taken care of.
Yeah.
We outsourced that to the government because that's what made the most efficient sense in the society that we're living in now. And now we are hamstringing those very organizations that had been doing a decent job,
Yeah.
but the more we've hamstrung them over the years, the more vulnerable they are to acts that we're seeing today.
Okay. So hopefully the future will be good. But along those lines, since we are experiencing these different threats and whatnot, how is the job opportunities looking right now in the behavioral health social work field? Are there, a decent amount of jobs available right now that you know of?
I absolutely see that need, yes. And I absolutely see the demand. I started a Facebook group called Social Workers of the Miami Valley back when I was a grad school student.
Okay.
Through the National Association of Social Workers. I was the regional representative. So put this together. And there's actually a number of good groups on Facebook for social workers in the region for sharing about jobs, sharing research.
Oh, that's awesome.
Knowledge,
You
fun
guys
events
remember
that are
that.
going on.
Facebook groups, go check it out.
They
That's
are.
awesome.
It's a lot of folks that look like me, have a little bit of gray in the hair, but there's good connections possible. And we
Good.
hear a lot of people coming in saying, oh, can I get an internship? Or who's got stuff? Or I'm looking for jobs. What do we got? And we have organizations coming in constantly saying, hey, we need LSWs. Hey, we need
Really? On
MSWs.
Facebook?
We need LISWs. Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And if you hop in, you could be like, hey, does anybody know of? And folks in their own networks could be like, hey, I know this person is hiring, or this organization. We see a lot of need right now for medical social work and for hospice social work, for nursing home social work. So we have a very growing elder population with a lot of complex needs.
Yeah.
And when we have someone who is skilled in that area, can come in, take your social gerontology classes, learning about the lifespan and what's going on with that population.
Yeah.
I forget the stats, but we're going to be approaching like 40, 50% of the U.S. population being over 50 and dealing with health issues, financial issues, especially if Social Security is threatened.
Yeah.
And obviously the costs of living are rising dramatically under tariffs and other programs. So
Wow. I didn't even think about it like that.
So
bring a whole new perspective.
Yep.
That's awesome. So next, I really want to talk about your own private practice and what it's like running it and everything. So kind of tell us, the audience and everything, a little bit more about your specific private practice that you do.
Sure. So when I first got out of college and finished the second master's degree, it was so exciting. Literally on my birthday, my 40th birthday, I had just finished classes the week before. We did this big, like, okay, what can we do to celebrate these two huge things? We went to Iceland.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, we had plane tickets for 2 people, round trip for just $800. It was like, okay, let's do this. There will never be another chance for this. And we were on my birthday in an Airbnb, and I'm looking at jobs. And I put in an application, and I got accepted for an interview and came back. And within another month or so, I was hired at Equitas Health.
Okay.
Love Equitas. It's the largest provider of medical services in Ohio for LGBTQ population. And they grew out of the AIDS resource centers that used to be in each of the cities. They consolidated, about 15 years ago, I want to say now, to be one organization providing medical, social work type services, case management. And I spent 3 years learning how to work with this population, learning about identity, learning about the crucial needs of folks who are marginalized in that way in our society, and absolute passion for this community, which has become my community in ways that I hadn't been as explicit about before. I was always part of the freaks and geeks groups. So looking back, it's like, oh yeah, pay attention.
Yeah.
So we had an amazing team there, behavioral health. I helped with some big projects there. And then at the end of about 3 years, I said, all right, it's time to go branch out and start exploring private practice. And in January of 2023 is when I started seeing my first clients as an individual practitioner. I own and run Oak and Willow Counseling. It's in Kettering.
Okay.
I rent a space at The Well, a center for wellness, which provides holistic medical and mental health care for people of all populations. Mine is LGBTQ focused, and trauma is a big part of that. I have a trauma-informed lens that I bring to most of the work that we do.
Okay.
And I see lots of individual clients, lots of partner clients, and am expanding into leading groups, group therapy, where it might just be one person coming in that day. It might be 20, but we're going to be talking about mental health topics and ways to support each other as well as ourselves as we navigate the challenges of this world that we're in.
Oh, wow. That sounds awesome. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that your focus is on the LGBTQ plus community. And I wanted to ask, in certain instances, situations, do they need more behavioral and just mental health assistance in general in comparison to those who are not a part of the community?
So that's a very interesting question because there's 2 layers to it. The answer is on the face, yes, absolutely, because they're a marginalized population for the most part. We have to be careful about who we are out with.
Okay.
Some families are just 100% supportive and the kids are great and whole family is like, yeah, be you. Why would that be an issue? Yes, awesome.
Right.
And go about, live your life. But others are growing up in families that are not. And so when your very identity doesn't feel safe with the people who are your most important close supporters, if you have parents or grandparents or siblings that refuse to use the correct gender, if you have a faith community that you're part of that is condemning you and shaming you for your very existence, whether you're out or not.
Yeah.
If you are attending a school in Ohio, and with the recent passage of HB 8 on top of HB 68 last year, these are House bills that are anti-trans and will create a very hostile, unsafe environment for people to be able to access mental health care or exist as themselves in schools. You don't have safety. And when a human doesn't have safety, that's what leads to trauma. The working definition I use for trauma is anytime we feel that we are at risk of our lives, physically or our identity life, and we feel helpless and hopeless. If any of those components are missing, it's not trauma, it's just stress. But
Right.
if we're helpless and hopeless and we don't feel that there's anyone who can help us out and we aren't able to take action for ourselves and someone is there telling us you don't deserve to exist, I'm not going to make it safe for you to exist as you are, that's inherently traumatic. So your question was, do folks who are LGBTQ need more services? And the answer is yes, but it's not because they're LGBTQ.
Right.
It's because the communities that they're part of are often so hostile to
Yeah.
or neglectful of or simply misattuned and don't understand and can't validate the reality of their lived experience. And we all need that as humans.
Right.
We need to be able to look in the mirror of our families and our communities and our loved ones and be able to go, oh, I'm welcome here, just
Yeah.
as I am. If you don't have that resource, it's much harder to go out into the world and just go after any of the goals and meeting any of the needs that are true for every one of us.
Okay, I agree with that. So they just experience things just a little bit differently,
Mm-hmm.
and so they need that extra. Okay, all right. So what you're doing is perfect, and they need you. They need this outlet. So because everybody needs somebody, like you were talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know what that's like, being completely shut out by the people who love you and stuff like that. That must be a very, very hard thing to deal with.
Extremely.
I
It's why we have
Yeah.
such a massively high suicide rate in young people and why campaigns like It Gets Better matter so much and why not having to see headlines that are constantly denying your existence and attempting to get you to disappear from public life as if you've just gone away
yeah.
are so dangerous and harmful. And if we do it to any population, all populations are at risk. We're all
Understand.
connected.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been doing this for a little bit now.
Mm-hmm.
Is it challenging trying to run your own private practice?
Not as challenging as it could be.
Okay.
So there are many private practices out there that have been able to hire the staff, put in the work, put in the time to deal with health insurance and get reimbursement.
Okay.
I am not at a place where I can do that in my practice at this point. There are plenty of folks who can, not me, unfortunately. If I was doing that, I would probably be seeing about 5 clients a week because the
Okay,
rest
yeah.
of the time would be spent trying to deal with the paperwork. But insurance is one of the biggest threats to access to mental health care and actually to any kind of medical care these days.
Yeah.
Because you must prove over and over and over again. You must dot every I and cross every T exactly the way they say it. And each insurance company is different. You code the different treatments that you're doing differently, including whether you're doing telehealth or not, using different codes for each insurance provider. They make it as complex and as challenging as possible because then they can go, we're denying you for this.
Yeah.
After a 6-week or 6-month turnaround, one of the things that finally scared me off completely was realizing how many therapists will open their bank account one day and see that $2,000, $4,000, $15,000 is missing from it, if it was even in there in the first place,
Yeah.
or they will refuse to pay further insurance for any client until that debt, quote unquote, is made up because they made an error. The insurance company made an error 2 years ago on a patient that you saw weekly for a year. And they're like, nope, that $5,000, $10,000 that we paid out, no, we're not doing that. So it's called a clawback, and it is a deeply problematic practice,
Sounds like it.
which if we had a functional federal government that had some sway and had some power, like we saw under the previous administration, negotiating prescription drug prices and being able to push back and say, no, you have to provide care for people who are who have pre-existing conditions, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
With no strong organized village response to profit-focused insurance companies, we have no protections. So we do private pay at Oak and Willow Counseling, and that means that people are paying themselves. They might be able to get reimbursement. They get super bills at the end of each month that they can submit to their insurance company and say, hey, I did this. It's mental health. It follows all these rules.
Okay.
Will you pay it out? And if that's not available to them, we might have a sliding scale available
Oh, that's nice. So
that
some
can help them
options.
out. So people who
That's
are paying full price are helping make sure that others do. My personal practice is that About 15% of what I provide is just given away. So
Oh,
either
wow.
through sliding scale or hardship payments.
Oh, nice. So you guys do keep that in mind. That's really
Mhm.
nice. So if you can speak now that you've had this experience in your own private practice, what are some pathways that a student or anybody starting or they graduated and everything and they're about to get started going into their private practice, how can they get there?
Oh, well, kind of going back to that original comment, get experience. Work for different organizations, volunteer, talk to others in the community, be involved with social work organizations or other behavioral health groups in your community and your region and hear what works for you. What are the things that we could be exploring here? And as they get that lived experience, they'll be able to better apply that to whatever they're tackling
Okay,
on
perfect.
their
Perfect.
population.
Nice. Everybody remember that because
Mhm.
that's very useful for people trying to get into their own private practice. So we know now how long you've been doing this, kind of what you enjoy the most about it and everything.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to get into your own personal motivation about a few different things. So what has made you stick with this field for so long? Like, what is it that's holding you to it?
Again, that scope of you can do anything here. I miss working in policy, and I'm looking forward to a time in the future where I'll be able to dedicate more time and resources to that. When I started my private practice, I said, I'm setting this plan, this core model. I'm not changing it for 3 years. I really want to get that solid foundation, know what it's like to be doing individual and partner therapies, maybe some group therapies, but I'm not hiring staff. I'm not opening locations. I'm not changing the business structure in significant ways.
Okay.
But down the road, I hope to be able to do that, to be able to say, all right, well, let's bring in a couple other therapists so we can be meeting the need in the community for individual care.
Right.
But let's make sure I'm freeing up 5-10 hours a week to make sure I can be advocating. I can be going to the State House. I can be working with political leaders to do the advocacy work that's needed. I can be helping support coalitions forming or coalitions that are already there and might need a little extra energy and boosts.
Yeah.
We've done the work. Don't reinvent the wheel. How do we collaborate to advocate more? And if you're a student right now, or if you are in practice right now, join the National Association of Social Workers. The Ohio chapter, and yes, I'm biased, but the Ohio chapter is outstanding. Literally, if we're not the top, we are in the top 3 in the country as far as genuine advocacy, not just for behavioral health therapists and social workers, but for the communities we serve, for the clients we serve. We've won national awards for the efforts we've made to protect against encroachment on the mental health field. Thousands of hours went into advocacy to try to prevent HB 68 and HB 8 from passing, which are the strictest and most abusive legal laws that have passed in the country so far that are attacking behavioral health workers specifically around care for LGBTQ folks or anyone. There's no other state that has laws saying, we're telling you what you can do in your practice as social workers. So we've been doing a lot of advocacy work on that, and I get to be a trainer who goes around the state with NASW Ohio and help teach behavioral health providers, how do you still protect your transgender clients and your transgender students and your queer students and your other marginalized students as these laws are coming out, while making sure that you're not in violation of those laws.
Right.
How do we make sure we are able to maintain our practices and stay connected to our communities, providing necessary life-saving resources without violating our ethics at their core?
Okay.
And that's been deeply empowering work, helping people find their way. We had a wonderful comment from someone who shared that after 26 years in the practice, she'd never been to a better training, and that she walked in feeling so hopeless and overwhelmed, which, as you'll remember, those are parts of trauma.
Right.
And walked out saying, I feel like I have power now. Like I have a choice. Like I am acting. I'm making a positive difference despite whatever's going on in the world. And that I'm a crucial part of that.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
this is social work. This is advocating for your communities. This is meeting the individual's needs and helping them find their solutions. And it's not doing it alone.
Right.
Because we can't do any of this alone.
Yes. I remember that being your message before. So it sounds like partially one of the main motivations here is that you still have so much more to do.
Yes.
so much more to accomplish, which is nice. You have so many goals, and that's a great thing to have, especially in a field like this. But let me ask you, is there anything that you wish you did differently on this path?
Not tried to save the world in all the directions at once. And that is something that a lot of us do and try to take on.
Okay.
But once I found my niche, once I found my way into working at Equitas and working with this population and saying, oh, yeah, we can do this, we can make a difference, that was like, yep, this is a way in, and this is a way to focus all of the resources so that we can stand hand in hand with those who are fighting for reproductive justice and immigrant justice and fair wages and strong unions and all of these things that help us build a stronger collective community in the ways that I think all humans are wired for.
Yes.
Unless we're sociopaths, but
Which some people can be, but you know. So we already know a field like this can get very stressful.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't have any professional experience, but I kind of understand how it can get. And so I wanted to know how you kind of deal with any type of burnout that you might experience, and like how often do you experience burnout, talking to so many different people on such a deep level? Like, how do you handle that?
I'm going to bring us back a few years to the early days of the pandemic.
Okay.
So mid 2020, we had pivoted within a couple of weeks of the initial lockdowns to doing entirely in-person treatment to entirely video based. And that was a massive, very rapid change, but we navigated it and quickly found that our usual rate of maybe around 8 to 10 cancellations or no-shows had dropped to 0.
Oh, wow.
Which
Everybody's
meant we
showing up.
were seeing 32, 33 clients a week, 7 a day, bang, bang, bang. It was really tough. And we started to learn, okay, well, we need to like bake in a paperwork session in there. And I got to attend a seminar, a webinar offered by OSU. I think it was their College of Social Work, on burnout and how to deal with this. And the thing that they taught us was revolutionary and really changed the way I approach social work.
Okay.
It said that emotional fatigue is universal. If you're in a job that you care about, if you're doing any kind of education or engagement in the world that is important to you, you're going to have emotional fatigue.
Right.
Because,
Inevitable.
yes, there's too many challenges out there, not enough resources. And the way that you deal with emotional fatigue is you do self-care. You have really good boundaries at work. You make sure that your downtime is genuine downtime. You do the things that make your body feel good. Again, going back to that core 5, the sleep, the nutrition, the movement, the social connections, and the time outdoors.
Right.
If you're meeting those, you're going to be good. The self-care matters. Take care of it. When we get into burnout is different. Burnout means that the structures that we're operating in are problematic. We have too many clients scheduled per day. We're not getting paid enough. We don't have benefits that we are actually getting benefits from.
Right.
We're experiencing too many changes too rapidly. That is a major part of the recipe for burnout. And those, it doesn't matter how much self-care you're doing, that'll help with the emotional fatigue component, but those structural injustices, especially if you're in a harsh and critical environment where your own worth, your own value is constantly being shut down, that's going to lead to burnout. And that one is when we actually need advocacy. We need community to come together and challenge what the situation is and not just put it on one person's shoulders and say, well, you should go take a bubble bath about it.
Yeah.
No, we should look at making sure that social workers have a living wage because we deserve that. That we're not taking student interns and using their work without pay while we're making money hand over fist and then saying, well, but we're giving them supervision and opportunity. No, you don't tell an artist, well, do this art for me for free.
Yeah.
And you'll get exposure. No. Value your staff and your employees. I don't care if they're a student. Maybe you're taking some of that money and putting that for all the hours of supervision and paperwork you're doing. But don't just make them work for free. That's exploitation of labor. And that's a place you can be working on organizing, y'all.
Hey, you heard. So
NASW Ohio's on it.
yes,
They got your back.
because nobody wants to like work for nothing, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, experience and all that only goes so far, I
Yes.
think. So I feel like you've shared a lot of inspirational information today to give everyone an idea of what things can be like. And I just love all of the different stories because I feel like each social worker, their stories are similar but very different at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Everybody has a different kind of upbringing into it. But in this little closing remark that we have here, I wanted you, just in general, it doesn't have to be related to social work or anything, but I wanted you to kind of give any advice for people listening that they can kind of take and benefit from in their future. It could be anything that you want to tell the people that could help them.
Remember your value.
Mm.
Whether you are advocating for better pay rates, whether you are advocating for more connections with your colleagues, whether you are standing on a street holding a sign and saying, hey, can we just be kind to each other?
Yeah.
Or you're giving yourself that extra 15 minutes of sleep, turning off the screens a little earlier, reading a book that gives you value. All of these things are gifts that remind us we're humans outside of the systems that our society creates for us. And when we have that center, we have so much more to give.
I love that. All right, Rhea. So honestly, I would love to stay in contact with you after hearing all of this. It sounds like you can even help me in my life during my struggles. But for everybody else, how would our audience or anybody listening get a hold of you or your organization?
So my website is oakandwillowohio.com. You can email me at ria@oakandwillowohio.com. You can go to Psychology Today, and I have a profile up there. So Psychology Today is essentially the main dating site for finding a good psychologist and figuring out if they might be a good fit for you.
Okay.
And you can connect at any of the community events that I'll be holding starting actually tomorrow, which is going to be Valentine's Day here in 2025.
Oh, nice. Okay.
But currently the plan is that on the second Fridays of each month for the rest of this year, we'll be meeting to hold community support groups and events. We did one right after the election for anyone to come and get any kind of support they might need. And we had almost 40 people turn out to
Good
make
turnout.
little community cards of encouragement for each other and share and process with a therapeutic guide to help navigate those emotions. And most of us came out of that feeling a lot more empowered and a lot more safe and a
Good.
lot less alone. And that's what we all need, whether it's an administration that's hostile to us or one that's in favor, because we are the village and we need each other.
Well, Rhea, I can tell you this. You're very comforting.
I'm glad to
very
hear that.
comforting. Yes. I
Likewise.
feel comfortable. And hearing that this is what you're doing just out of the kindness of your heart for the people, I think that's just such a comforting feeling to have, to know that there is someone there who can kind of be that cushion. And I think a lot of people want that, you know, because they don't know. And when they find out that there is someone who they can kind of lean on a little bit, it definitely eases the tension in their life, because life can get so stressful, especially right now, like you were saying.
Yeah.
With everything that's going on, it's kind of getting out of hand and crazy. So we appreciate you for being there for us when we need you. And we appreciate you for coming on to the podcast today, sharing your story and information that can help encourage students and people who are older who want to get into it. Like some people, they might not be in school or nothing, but they still want to do social work, you know, and they want to know how to get into it. And
I was 38 when I started my grad school program. So yeah, it's never too late.
that's what I always say. It's never too late. My father is 78 years old. He's been retired for a while. But he still does things and he's still interested in different things. So we're always learning no matter the age that we are. So stuff like this is, I think, encouraging to people of all ages.
Indeed.
So we really appreciate you. But I also want to thank everyone else for joining us here today and listening to what Rhea had to tell us. I know that everybody learned something from this today because there was a lot of information given, a lot of good information given, and we appreciate it. But if you guys want to find further information about behavioral health in general and some other things along that line, you can visit our website at behavioralhealthcareer.com. On there, you'll find different outlets and connections to different social workers, and you can also find the other podcast episodes that we have done. So give that a look. But yes, I'd like to give you another thanks, Ria, for joining us. Um, it
Caleb,
was so
thank you
motivating.
so much for hosting and for your warmth and the safety that you create. It's awesome to get to explore these questions with such a kind and respectful listener.
Oh, well, thank you, Ria. I appreciate that. I think
Mhm.
that this is probably the best way for me personally to help. This is
Mhm.
kind of,
Yes.
a little tiny foot in the door of social work that I'm doing, but that's good enough for me. I want to help wherever I can,
Hmm.
and I think this, with it being my expertise, it's very easy for me to do so. And I'm just hoping that what I predict is that people will be looking at this 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and still learning from it, despite things changing over time. I think that people can still learn stuff from these sessions. So I'm glad you enjoyed being a part of it, and
Indeed.
hopefully you guys did too. So we will catch you next time on the Social Work Speaks podcast.